But you gotta maintain, you know? Yeah, so.
When we were talking during the sixth episode about patriarchal behaviors, you let it slip that you were coming out with a book on February 14th, and I was like, oh, got to have her back. So as soon as I you know had the opportunity, got the book, and wanted and thank you so much for making the time to have this discussion. And so, I mean, today the topic is queendom, right? You have a book, The Art of Polyandry for the Black Goddess, Polygamy for Her, and
Mhm.
really wanted to get into a conversation today. Do you have any initial thoughts before we begin?
No, I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm glad that you got the book, and I'm interested in knowing your thoughts on it, like when you're finished, when you read everything, because I was very apprehensive. I almost didn't even come out with it. So yeah.
All right. So we gotta get into that because I'd like to hear that story. Um,
Hmm.
so can the book talks about polyandry.
Hmm.
I wanted to first set up kind of a baseline, right? So,
Hmm.
what is your personal definition of leadership, and what are the responsibilities of a leader within a romantic relationship?
I'm glad you asked that because we have this discourse, between our men, black men and black women, about leadership, who should be the head of house, all that. So I want to be able to go into my book, reference it for a second. And because I actually point out leadership, because obviously, one thing that I think is more natural is the woman being the leader. So, in this particular book, I do a chapter on what is it called? Manifesting your tribe, right? And in that, the first step is self analysis. So I'm going to reference just a small part. It is on page 22, if you have that. Okay, so on page 22, what I have here is the guide part where I'm having the goddess ask herself these particular questions. So it says, do I possess all the characteristics needed to carry out this dynamic long term? Am I equipped with the 5 skills needed to realistically operate in such a sacred union? So she's asking herself these questions. She's basically asking herself, is she an effective leader for multiple people, right? So one is communication and comprehension skills. That is very important because we can talk all we want to in relationships, but if we're not able to have the empathy to understand where they're coming from or be able to come outside of ourselves to understand their perspective, then it's all for nothing. You know what I mean? Then what you have is a relationship where you're expecting everyone to just see your side and operate off of you. What makes, basically, dance around your triggers, things like that. And that is what I consider a toxic relationship. So we have to be able to understand how to see the other person's point of view as well.
Can you talk more about that a little bit when you talk about dancing around someone else's triggers?
Yes, there was in my experience. There was a young man that I was speaking with, and he created a perception of me based off of my actions. And when it came down to us talking about different things that we saw in each other, I think there was one time he blew up on me because I said that the way in which he responded to me was feminine. Now, when I say a man is acting in a feminine manner, I'm talking about the energy. I'm not talking about feminine as a degrading way or trying to make him emasculated or anything like that. I was just saying the feminine as she moves and flows, she's not as the masculine is more direct when it comes to communication. So he was deciding to dance around the conversation. And I was just like, well, you took the more feminine route in how you communicated with me. And he got all up in arms and was very upset. So, and he later on told me, after he calmed down, he later on told me that feminine, the term, the word, no matter how I meant it, it was a trigger for him. And he expected that from that moment, I should refrain from using the word feminine from our entire, interaction together. And I had to tell him that you have to work on that. It is not anyone else's responsibility to make you comfortable or make you not deal with your own traumas. If you have these things that you have to deal with, you have to deal with them before you get into relationships so that people don't have to dance around your triggers. So you have to, like, you know what I mean? Otherwise, you're just trying to find someone to mold and make into your image how you want them to be, how you want them to talk, everything. So I'm very, very adamant on in between relationships, taking as much time as you need, whether it's 9 months, a year, whatever, and being able to work through what you went through. What did you learn? How can you maneuver in a way that's more healthy for both you and whoever you're with? Because no one is supposed to be around like, oh, you didn't eat when you were a little kid, then we're never gonna fast. Like, you know what I mean? No one should be doing that. So yes.
Did he take like being called feminine like a derogatory?
Yes. I wasn't calling him feminine. I was just saying that the way he communicated
Right.
was more of a feminine way. Like, you know what I mean? Basically, he wanted to uh misdirect or what did I say? He was because this happened years ago, but he basically was saying that he danced around, like he sugarcoated it and danced around it instead of just coming out and saying what it is. Like my style of communication is more masculine. I'm more abrupt, I'm more blunt, I'm more direct, and I'll just tell you how I feel and take it how you want it, right? But he wanted to sugarcoat things and find ways around. I'm like, there's no need to take the scenic route in conversation. Just tell me what you need to tell me. Don't worry about my reaction of how I'm gonna respond, because then it becomes manipulative in a sense.
That makes sense. And I apologize for the rabbit hole, but it was just interesting. So I want
Yeah.
to get into that. But you were talking about the different things as far as requirements for leadership.
Oh, yes, yes. Requirements for leadership. So the second one is discernment and time management. Yes, that is a big one. Discernment and time management. Being able to determine what's the best thing for each person. That means getting to know each person and understanding what it is that they need. Because there's this, especially when people are practicing ethical non monogamy, there's always this conversation around how do you treat each partner equally? And, they think that the best way to do that is to assign each person a day at the exact time, the exact, activities, and try to mimic one relationship multiple times so that everyone can feel seen and heard and loved. But it does not go that way. That's why discernment is important with the time management, because you have to be able to figure out what each being needs. Each being needs something different. So, and that was something that I went through as well in my polyandry relationship. So different guys got jealous because they didn't do the same things as the other guy, but that's not what we usually do. So yeah. So we have to work on that. And the goddess has to be she has to be very healthy mentally. She has to be stable mentally. Not that she has to be perfect, but she has to have some sort of awareness and consciousness to be able to do this. Um, Compassion and empathy that goes into what they may be going through, being able to help draw out the emotions that the man may be otherwise hiding, right? Because it's very easy for a man. You could ask him what's wrong because you feel that something is wrong, but he'll easily respond with, I'm good, and then keep going on about his day. But one thing that we all do, not just men, we all use that staple response. I'm okay, it's okay, I'm good. But sometimes you have to be able to utilize your intuition and be like, well, are you sure? This happened yesterday. How do you feel about that? This happened at work. How did that make you feel? You know, you kind of have to go in and utilize your compassion and empathy and basically put yourself in their shoes, because they're not going to come out and just speak to you. One thing that our men is going through right now is the ability to express their emotions or be able to feel them. You know, they have to know that they're allowed to feel all of their emotions, and you're that safe space for them to be able to feel it, pause, feel it, and then be able to express what they're feeling. So again, you also become the therapist in a sense.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. The next one is conflict resolution. Okay, so that's a big one. That is, of course, knowing each being, how they respond to different types of communication, knowing the safe levels of voice control, tones, right? You never want to scold, right? I'm a little guilty of, raising my voice, but there is an art to conflict resolution, and what I like to do in my relationship is attack the roots to the plant. A lot of times our problems is what we're seeing is the flowering. We're seeing it, but we have to be able to understand that in order to figure out how this problem came to be, to solve it, we have to go to the root of the problem. So that means if there is jealousy in a relationship, most likely it's from an unhealed wound or an insecurity. So figure out what that insecurity is and then be able to attack that. And then you don't have to worry about, don't look at it as you did something wrong. Because most times you didn't really do anything wrong. You know what I mean? Let's just say the guy is like, oh, you went to the movies with such and such. We didn't get a chance to go to the movies. Now, instead of trying to fix that problem with taking the other man to the movies, it would be sitting down and talking with him and figuring out what made you feel that way. Tell me about your past. This is the reason why during the vetting process, you want to make sure you get to know them, ask them about their past relationships. If they're the type to say, oh, I don't talk about my past, it's in the past, it's just me and you now, then that means there's going to be a bunch of problems in your future that you're never going to be able to fix because he never fixed them himself. So yeah, I like to dive deep and get to the root, figure out what that is, and then the flower won't grow once you figure out what the seed is. So that's what I like to do.
It sounds
Um,
like that part of leadership is being able to manage like equality and equity. Like
mhm.
what like how do you what are your thoughts on those two concepts and how to, because it seems like there's almost like a parallel between people trying to attain equality and equity in general and finding equality and equity in a relationship. Like what are your thoughts? Not to we may get off track a little bit and just
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
questions, but like how do you do that as far as maintaining both the equality and equity aspects of a relationship?
Well, when it comes to that, we have to understand that a lot of it is perception, right? A lot of it is subjectivity. So when we're thinking about what's equal, we're really trying to figure out, we have to establish in the beginning of the relationship what is equal to us, right? Each tribe, each little union or relationship have to figure out what that is to you, right? So equity in itself is what I consider equal. You know what I mean? Everyone is being treated equally as long as they're all receiving the love that they need. Then everyone is being loved equally. Me mimicking one relationship 2 to 3, 4 times is not equal to me because it may not cater to their personal need, right? Then to me, it's off balance, right? So we have to figure out what is that. A lot of people attack the problem with a preconceived notion of what equality or equity is. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, and it's not just doing the same thing over and over. I think when it comes to Islam, they have it where a man can take about up to 4 wives as long as he's able to provide for all of them equally. And in that term of equal, it means if you buy one wife a car, all the other wives get a car. If you buy one wife a house, all the other wives get a house, right? And that is an unhealthy concept of how we deal with different partners who have different needs. Because you can get somebody a Lamborghini, but they have no desire to drive. You know what I mean? Driving is stressful to them. So buying them a car is not, just because you got the other wife a car, is not you seeing them or hearing them. They will feel unseen. They will feel unloved. Like, you know what I mean? So we have to be able to establish what, equity is, because I believe equity is more accurate, where you can basically give people different levels of different things and they all feel the same, right? They all feel equally loved. That's what we have to really look at it as.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Were you I think you had one more point on leadership.
Yes, leadership skills, I summarize that. But leadership skills is basically the ability to manage a situation. And I like to look at that as, um, like I said in the last interview, basically when we're in school and we have a group project, I attack the polyamorous relationship in the same fashion. So being able to figure out each person's skill and allowing them to thrive in that skill, in their talent, right? And that benefits the whole. And we're all doing something. And you, as the leader, being able to determine what they're great at and being able to assign roles based off of their abilities. That's a great leader. Also being able to know when they need a break, when they need to relax, when they need time off, when they need time to do a little shadow work, when they need just a moment to isolate and work on, any traumas or whatever. So you, as the leader, you need to be able to have that bird's eye view, as I say. And this is the reason why I believe women are natural leaders, because they have that ability to look at a situation and be able to figure out and see what everyone needs and be able to allocate what everyone can do and not be burnt out, because they care about everybody. And that is an integral part of leadership, is being able to care how each person is affected. You know what I mean? Not just going simply for the outcome of whatever mission you're doing. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yes.
Okay. Probably circle back to I guess the how men carry out leadership. I wanted to ask this question first. Like, so we're talking about on the with female led relationships. Like, what are the benefits of being in a female led relationship?
Mhm.
Um, I guess for women and for men, but I guess first for women and then for men, and how do they differ from traditional relationships? I guess that does kind of get at to it. Like the traditional relationship being kind of a male led relationship. Like, how
Right.
does that leadership differ, and what how does it show up?
Well, it shows up in how leadership is carried out, right? So we have to think about the mindset of men in relationships today. The traditional relationship, while it may have the benefits to some women, right? It's more about possession, right? His wife, his children, his property. He delegates everything because he's in control, right? The difference with a female-led relationship is, it's not so much that she's in control, but it's more so she is the guiding light, right? She is there to ensure everyone is taken care of, everyone is seen. You know what I mean? So it's not so much her property. Her husbands are not her property. The children are not her property. Like, you understand what I'm saying? So it's a very different approach to how leadership is done. So that means when it comes to decisions or major decisions, she wouldn't just make them and let everybody just follow suit. It would be more of, I'm going to ask each person their opinion and take that into consideration in how I make the decision. So it's a big, big difference in how leadership works. So the benefit of that is the woman is not stifled from being able to express herself and her femininity. So that means she's not being told how to dress. She's not being told how to walk, how to talk, who to look at, who to smile at. You know what I mean? The men benefit in that because they're not put in a position that is unnatural to them. You know what I mean? Being a leader is unnatural to the man. And the reason why is because he has to worry about too many things. It's more of a complex role that makes him have to be more empathetic and compassionate to everybody when his mind is not set for that particular role. One thing that I'm not sure if you came across, but there was a study done about the difference between the male brain and the female brain, right? And the frontal lobe, right, is where we make our decisions, how we see, how we react, and things like that. So one thing that we notice when we're talking about emotions, right, is that men are more reactive to certain things, while women will take the time to assess the situation before they react, because they want to consider how their reaction, whatever they do, will affect everyone. So that makes her a more effective leader naturally. You know what I mean? So it actually gives the men a break to be able to do what they're great at without having to think about so many other people. And I think that pressure that patriarchal society has put on men has caused them to be depressed, stressed, and it has caused them to be violent. You know what I mean? More violent than they need to be, because again, they're in a situation where they have so much pressure to perform in a way that's just like too much for them to handle, and they're not able to thrive. You know what I mean? They're not able to thrive in their talent, in their skill, and then they end up unaliving themselves at a higher rate than everybody else because it's a major pressure put on them to be a certain way, and it's tied to their self-image, their self-worth, their masculinity. So they're always in this in this state of proving who they are. So it makes them lost, walking around lost, always trying to get validation. So in a female-led relationship, they don't have to worry about that kind of pressure from a patriarchal society. They can kind of hone in on what they're great at and be able to thrive. And once they're thriving and they're getting all of the accolades for what they're great at, they'll feel better about themselves. They'll know who they are. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's interesting because I've never heard it explained that way before, but it resonates because when I first learned about how patriarchy works, or how the differences between matriarchy and patriarchy were compared to each other, it was,
Mhm.
like patriarchy was this vertical structure, where you have very
Mhm.
few people at the top,
Right.
the strongest men, and then it
Mhm.
goes down by level of strength to, other
Right.
men, and then women and children are underneath them there. And but there's this pressure coming down from top down on all these other men, you know what I mean? Depending on,
Mhm.
so a lot of times the weaker men get crushed under that system.
Yes. Yes.
It seemed like what you were describing was more of a horizontal societal structure where the leadership is spreading out and trying to figure out what does everyone else need to accomplish the goal for the collective. That
Right. Right. Right.
am I
Right.
understanding that right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So basically it's more of a nurturing environment. It's kind of like the mother role. That's kind of like where we get maternal, matriarchy. All of that has the root word ma, right? And that is basically letting you know what matriarchy is. It's the mother rule, not just woman rule, right? And people get this idea like, oh, women rule would just mirror patriarchy with just women on top. And they think it's a sex thing. And it's really not. It's a principle thing, right? It's not about conquering, to be on top, which is why a lot of men feel horrible about themselves because they're unable to conquer. You understand what I'm saying? So those men who are unable to conquer, who are trying their very, very best to be at the top of the hierarchy of, the patriarchy, and once they realize they aren't that, they'll fight their entire lives. And once they realize they aren't that, it settles in and it becomes a existential crisis for them. You know what I mean? So in the female led relationships or matriarchy, it's more of a nurturing environment to where it's about who are you? You know what I mean? Individually. What's great about you individually? What is your gifts? And once we figure out what that is, go ahead and do that. You know what I mean? Do that, because that's how you're supposed to serve humanity, what your natural talents and gifts are. You don't have to fit into an image that isn't you. It puts men into this box. Like the patriarchy puts men into this box that they have to check all these boxes. They have to fit in that image. And if they don't, then they're not a man. You know what I mean? So it's very, very strict. It's very, very toxic and very unhealthy for the mind.
So yeah, a lot of men actually wind up shunning their gifts and talents to fit into that box. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put down the paintbrush and pick up, an AK-47, because
Right.
that's what
Mm-hmm.
patriarchy said I should do. I'm supposed to be a soldier, not an artist, or, I'm a fighter, not a lover, those type of things. That no,
Right.
that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then, for women and I guess for and for men who might be like curious or interested in pursuing an FLR, like where are some of the I guess the common challenges that they should I guess watch out for or be prepared for?
Um, the biggest challenge I would say for people transitioning, from the traditional nuclear family to, a female-led relationship is expectations. Um, it's one thing to understand theoretically that women are more suited for leadership, and on the other hand, actually doing it, living it out. So according to my experience, I have come across people who they bring their preconceived ideals and they think they're unpacking it, but it's a continual process, right? So that means you're going to come across situations in your relationship where you're going to have to unpack another layer of the internalized misogyny or just those gender roles that you've been taught. You're going to have to still unpack that while the relationship is going. Every time a new situation arises, you're going to be faced with what you previously thought relationships should look like. It's completely different, and it's not a complete reversal of just, the woman being on top. You know what I mean? So that means you have to not just go in thinking even if you understand it theoretically, you can't go in thinking you have to be able to sit back and ask, questions, because a lot of times, for example, in one of my relationships, there would be an issue where we would get into an argument, for lack of a better word. And I would be sitting there telling him, this is what you did that I didn't like, da 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 da, right? He would try to respond to me and say, well, you do this and you do that and you're not perfect. And in an effort to try and put us on equal footing, right? And I had to tell him that that's not how we achieve equity in this relationship. It's not a tit for tat. It's not transactional. You have to be able to sit back and take the lesson that you're being taught in the moment instead of trying to find or put us on equal footing. That's not what this is about, and I'm not trying to berate you or emasculate you. So when they come into this, there is a fear, you know what I mean, because they've come from an entire lifetime of trying to prove their masculinity, trying to find who they are in this world. They come into this relationship although very, excited, but also very apprehensive at the same time, because a lot of it can trigger you and make you feel emasculated, even if you're not being emasculated. You know what I mean? So it's a very humbling experience. And I think a lot of men need that.
True.
Yes. Especially when we talk about balance. Like, I think in general, we have to be able to ask, what is balance? Instead of thinking what we think that is. So if a man can sit down and ask the woman that he's seeing, what is balance? What does that look like? How can we achieve that in, a healthy way? That would be a great way to start the relationship instead of coming in thinking you know what it is and trying to implement it whenever you feel slighted, whenever you feel bad, like, oh, she caught me in this particular thing. Let me try and, bring her down a couple of pegs.
Well, it's interesting. Is what I heard in that. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold.
That's okay.
Deflection, right? I heard. And I think this happens in almost every relationship, unfortunately, with men. Is that there's a wrong being brought up in a moment, and instead of dealing with that, it's like, well, wait a minute. What about when you did this?
Yes.
But when that happened, we ignored it, or we just pushed it down because we're not used to acknowledging our feelings. We're not used to dealing with those emotions. So we just shoved it off on a file. And then only when a woman brings up an issue that they have with us do we then pull out this list of wrongs. You know what I mean?
Right. Bring it out as ammunition, like they just filled the clip.
And that's poor conflict resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We had a couple questions in the comments. I wanted to. Soul Magic says, well, she said nurture. Question: does this mean men don't naturally nurture?
They can. What happens is men nurture naturally, but men have not been in their natural state for a long time. Being that both men and women have been conditioned since childhood, there was a video I seen where this young lady was going into like children's stores and basically looking at all the sayings that would be on toddler clothes, and it would basically be telling the boys what to be and telling the girls what to be. Like, the girls stuff was more about her looks and the boy stuff was all about him being strong. And being in that kind of environment in this society, men aren't able to figure out who they are. They're told who they are. You know what I mean? So that means they're never in their natural state. So this is the reason why we have somebody like Akon who will say, I'm meant to have 1 billion children, but men are not supposed to be with those children. I don't know if you guys remember that interview, but that was crazy to me. And he said these things.
Yeah. Yeah, Akon said some pretty wild things. Definitely.
It was crazy to me, especially hearing that from, someone who you expect to be a little bit more conscious, just a little bit. Right. He's supposed to be making a city in Africa and helping the people, and then he coming out talking about. he said men could make babies without women. What? I'm sorry, he was killing.
I think
me.
That's it's a very unfortunately strong vein in Pan-Africanist and quote unquote pro-black thought. It's like you can be very, or at least it would appear to be you can be very pro-black or pan-Africanist and also be
Hmm.
very misogynist and patriarchal in your thinking, and
Yes. Yes.
homophobic.
Yes.
So it's I know in the comments they were asking, wait, are we trying to make deflection a gender thing? It's not that deflection in itself is a gender thing. Women can deflect too. It's
Hmm.
because of the way we're situated and the way we're conditioned. Men have problems taking accountability from women,
Hmm.
because
Right.
of
Right.
patriarchal
From other
thinking.
men, it's
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, it's like, oh, wait a
It's
minute.
easier.
And then there was a time where it's like, oh, you don't take a word of a woman. So some of those things still linger, and some of that residue, psychological residue, is still there. So when a woman is giving you feedback, you don't take it well because you're thinking, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be the man. I'm supposed to be one that gives the feedback because I'm the
Right.
leader, right? So
Hmm.
it's that social programming that starts to glitch. And that's why, if deflection is a gender thing, that's why it's a gender thing, because men will deflect when they're called to account from women and say, well, wait a minute, when you did this and you did that,
Hmm.
to get out of that accountability, if that
Right,
makes
right.
sense.
It's a part of conversational battle, right? So in conversational battle, they take it they take it like it's war. So if she's saying something that makes you feel small, then she's basically conquering you, right? So you want to make sure you have something in your arsenal to be able to fight back. And because men attack conversations this way, that's why deflection is so readily used, because it's a form of war. You know what I mean? It's like them shooting back.
Yeah, yeah, you just sit on that. Just stew on what she said. She answered your question. I'm not going to get too deep into it. But we kind of went right into the next question, like, how has patriarchy impacted the institution of marriage? And I always have a part B. What are the consequences of monogamy in a male-dominated society?
Okay, yes. So, okay, sorry, I was reading the comments. Repeat the question for me. Repeat the question for me.
No, certainly. How has patriarchy impacted the institution of marriage, and what are the consequences of monogamy in a male dominated society?
Okay, yes. The consequences is possession, like I said earlier. So when we are talking about marriage, marriage is again more of a concept of ownership, which is the reason why um even after you are no longer with a particular person, you do not want anyone else to be with them. Like there's still this lingering sense of, I own you, you're mine. Everybody who looks at you should be able to see my property. Same thing with why a lot of men don't want to have women who have children already, because they see them as conquered territory, right? It's not, they can't and they also want to know whose kid is theirs, right? That's the issue when it comes to polyandry as well. Like, is this going to be my kid? Is this my kid, or is it his kid? Like, you know what I mean? So when we're entering this new type of marriage, because that's what polyandry is, it's a marriage. I want to make sure people understand that, right? It's not just women going around just doing whatever, just opening their legs to everybody. It is a marriage. So in that marriage, we have to come in with a whole new understanding of what marriage is. It's more of a union of, so that we can elevate and progress and help each other grow. That's what it's about. It's not about being able to secure property.
Hmm. That's that's a big difference. When I think about all the different like rituals that are contained in marriage, where the father is walking the bride down the aisle and he gives giving the bride to the groom, and the
Yes.
name changes and things of that nature that are involved.
Yep,
What
that's a change in ownership. That's a ritual. Absolutely.
So in polyandry, is there a name change? Is there what, I guess, what does that ritual look like? in contrast to like a traditional wedding?
So it's more of the name change is more of all the men having the name of the wife, just because that would be her clan. This is something that came from ancient, societies, right? There will always be clan houses led by the mother, the matriarch of the home. So then property would be matrilineal. It would definitely go down through the children because the woman births the babies. That's simple, right? That's simple. But in the marriage ceremony, it's more of a collective, um a brother bonding. That's what happens. So if the men are all together, they all have to basically take a sip of the sacred drink, which is symbolic of the amrita or life elixir, and they would all drink it and pass it and drink it and pass it and drink it and pass it. So that's symbolic of a coming together or a joining. So it's to help them with brotherhood and also to see themselves as extensions of each other. Just like the body has different organs that work together for a singular purpose, or different arms and legs that work together to help with the movement of the body, all the men in a polyamorous relationship are extensions of each other, and they work together in tandem to basically achieve one goal, one purpose. So that's the difference in the marriage ceremony.
Thank you for that. And just to, I guess, address a comment in the questions, he says, a question in the comments. Said, I don't get why follow someone else's ideology. I would just say to that words are ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unless you're using your own words, where you made up the definition of those words, you're using someone else's idea. And even then, those words that you would come up with are still influenced by other words, other ideas. So no one just comes into this world having their own ideas. Knowledge is accumulative of everyone's idea, and so you're always following someone else's ideology.
Yeah, we're,
No
we're
one's
all
second thing.
mimicking, the patriarchal ideal right now. Just like I
Yeah,
said, as soon as we get infant clothes, it has sayings on it that tells them how to be. You know what I mean? It
yeah,
tells you what to think, what to do. That's why girls get easy bake ovens and dollies and babies and things to play with, and boys get trucks and water guns and stuff like that to play with. Legos to build houses and wrenches and stuff and all different types of
right.
stuff to tell you who you are. So you are a living example of someone else's idea. I don't want to say who it is, but we understand these particular people who have told us who we are, and they have molded society in their image. Industrial skyscrapers, that those are phallic structures. We are phallus worshipers right now. So we are living examples of someone else's idea, and coming out of that, right, coming out of that is a process of you figuring out and discovering yourself. Who are you outside of everything you've ever known? Most people have never done that.
That's powerful. It's almost like the best outcome for you in this world of ideologies is to make your name your own word. You know, meaning you determine who you are, right? What your name means
Mm-hmm.
amidst all these other ideologies by taking other ideologies among themselves. But breaking out of the existing predominant ideology is probably one of the hardest things to do because everything around you is screaming what that ideology is and that is
Yes.
the only way to live.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, what does polyandry look like in practice, and in what ways do, I guess, women-centered relationships work to dismantle patriarchy, to break down that reality?
Well, it's going back to the roles in a marriage, right? If I were to ask you as a married man, what are some of the things that you do? Do you provide for the home? Do you work? Do you have income? Do you help around in the house? Help her clean, help with chores, things like that. Do you have children? Do you help raise them? Do you take them to practice and blah, 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 right? So, with that, right? In a polyandry relationship, it's more of a communal environment, right? A communal environment. So that means there's multiple people working. And if someone was to stay home, then they can do that because there's people working, right? There is no, you have to work, you know. So the woman is able to do what she feels. You know what I mean? She's not pressured to work because they need to, because a household needs to have two incomes, right? If she doesn't want to, right? She's able to stay home. She's able to work on the energy. She's able to, nurture children if she has. So the ability for each person to do what they're great at and be able to add to the home. And of course, multiple incomes definitely makes us stronger. Definitely, because the reason why a lot of us is weak is because we stay in the cycle of work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep. We stay in this survival mode, right? Because we can't get out of, being able to pay our bills and
Right.
things like that. So if we have multiple husbands, then we have someone whose income is for bills only. Then we have someone whose income is for saving to buy land. Then we have someone's income who is for, leisure, for entertainment, because we all need that, right? So when we have that particular setup going on, then we're taken out of survival mode. And that's something that, if we were taken out of that, do you know how powerful we would be as a nation if we all weren't in survival mode? If we all saved up, if we all put our funds together and decided to get land so we can make our own laws, so we can, grow our own food, so we don't have to worry about being poisoned and getting sick and relying on the pharmaceutical companies to, treat our symptoms and not actually care about the root of our problems. So I can go on and on about that, but the premise is that there is a communal environment that creates a sense of security for the family so they never drop into poverty mode. And I'm not just talking economically here, I'm talking about mentally, because slavery is the mental state of victimhood. So then everything you do is out of survival. Everything you do is because you feel oppressed. You understand what I'm saying? So even though we may not physically be enslaved as a people, we are mentally enslaved right now. And it's because we're all victims of our circumstances. We have no inner power to exude into our reality. So polyandry puts us in that space where we're not victims anymore.
This, I guess a follow up question to that, and it sounds like the person said in the comments, it sounds like you're trying to dismantle the same system we are. I
Mhm.
understand that capitalism and patriarchy and supremacy are all connected, right? So if
Yes,
you're in
absolutely.
order to dismantle one, you have to dismantle the other. I guess my question is, because of that mental slavery, because of the social conditioning. Speaking specifically of a certain group, like why? How do you overcome the problem of us not trusting each other, or us being conditioned like not to trust each other? Because it seems like that type of venture would require a lot of trust amongst people. Like how do you build trust and maintain it in that type of environment?
Right. That comes from individual practice, because there is no way to make someone trust you who always has a guard up, right? And so this is the reason why, more than polyandry, I teach Yanism. And Yanism is the return to womb wisdom, which means you're going into the principle of, matriarchy, of goddess worship, and rediscovering what femininity is, what masculinity is basically a return to your natural self. And actually returning to the knowledge that everything in your reality is a mirror of yourself, so that it gives you the power to change your reality by changing yourself. So that's pretty much how we attack a lot of things, and it can actually equip you for a lot of different situations in life. So when it comes to trust, then then that becomes easier once you understand who you are and you understand the power that you have over your reality. So it starts from there. It starts from, self-work. Right, they put life is but a dream. Yeah.
That poem is very apt. I now, as a kid, I never realized how deep that was. The way I look, it's my one. I have a resting bee face, so I always had the Cleveland Ice Girl going on. Also, having some difficulty breathing, so that's why you might get a strange look. I'm like trying to make sure I don't cough as much on this transmission because I want to make sure the transmission comes through clear. So that's my internal battle. But yeah, I'm that's
Yeah.
no,
You
no
should
words
have
like
some
that.
elderberry tea with cinnamon and honey. Well, you don't even need honey actually. Cinnamon and lime.
Appreciate that. I will use that post haste.
Yes, and you have to get real elderberries, not the stuff in the
Oh,
pack.
not the Lipton tea bag version,
No, no, not
but
Lipton.
it
Go
says elderberry on it.
No, you have to go to, one of the fruit stores or, probably Whole Foods maybe, but any store that has natural fruits in it and see if they have, dried elderberries. And you just boil it in a pot and add a cinnamon stick. And that's all you really need. It tastes delicious, but it's really good for you.
I will leverage that. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I wanted to ask as well, just kind of in, I know and you did a couple videos on like, I think it was like Nature Boy,
Mhm.
way back when, and now Nature Boy is like kind of like locked up or whatnot.
Yeah.
How is polyandry? I don't know why I made that parallel, but that's just what came to mind when I think of other forms of polygamy. He's just, I guess, what
Right.
it is. How is polyandry unique from other forms of polygamy in accomplishing the goal of dismantling patriarchy? Mullion tea.
Well,
I got some mullions, so I'm gonna use that as soon as I get off.
um, it's funny you mention him, but it's not that funny, right? Because people would say, oh, he's not a good example, but he's actually a good example because he basically is the general mass of Black men and how they think, which is why he was able to grow in size, right? So we're not going to act like every person who practices polygyny is super conscious, super mentally stable and healthy, and they don't have any toxic traits. We're not going to act like that because that's unrealistic. But a lot of people are operating from a space of hurt because that's how Nature Boy operated. And they go in trying to tame the feminine because the feminine has always done something or treated him in a way where he couldn't grasp or have control over her. So they utilize polygamy and their insatiable thirst for variety to put that together, and then you have this polygamous practice that it does nothing for it does nothing for dismantling patriarchy, it does nothing for our people, it does nothing for anything, but all it does is it helps that particular man's ego and makes him feel like a man, makes him feel powerful, blah 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 blah, right? That's all it really does. But when we think about polyandry, um, in a sense, because we're gathering different men together, we're putting them in an environment that makes them uncomfortable. So it puts them in a state conducive for growth, right? Mentally, emotionally, because they've never had to be in a space where their every thought and conditioning is challenged. So yes, that's the state of growth. Then once you start there, then we have all of the incomes coming together, which takes you out of, the victim mindset, like I said earlier. And then once we have that, we are inherently dismantling the patriarchy through our minds, and physically through our economic power, right? So once you put those two things together, this is how polyandry helps in a way in which polygyny doesn't. And the basic argument is, oh well, we can't have as many babies. Polygyny, builds nation because we're able to have children. But as a nation, a society that we are at the bottom of every other racial group, it does not make sense to continue to have babies when we do not have economic power, we do not have our own military, we don't have anything. We're at the mercy of someone else, of another racial group. So we shouldn't be having more babies. That puts a lot of women out of commission to do anything, to where now she just has to care for the child, and it becomes a disadvantage for the man because now he has to pay and take care of all of these women and children. When black men, as a whole, aren't doing that great economically. You know what I mean? They're not doing that great. They're not able to sustain a household of two or more women and children. So you're basically putting yourself in a hole. You're digging yourself a deeper hole. And we're basically going to just stay in this state forever. if we practice polygyny in a oppressed state, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't build you out of that.
Listen, I know, like me personally, I I know that there is an active effort. There's been an active effort for a very long time as far as depopulation, population is concerned. And it
Mhm.
seems like when that conversation comes up, it's always, black and brown people that are the targets of that population. So and this comes into play when we're talking about kind of the pro-life, pro-choice debate, right? It always puts us in a paradox, because on the one hand, we 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 know there's an active effort to depopulate black and brown communities, and on the
Mhm.
other hand, there's also the uh, because of the fatherless home and just not having the quality care, the ability to care for the next generation, we wind up creating I guess if you could call it a society that's eating itself always. You know what I mean? We're always because we don't have the adequate resources to support those children, or in the midst of that argument, you have and I'll just say, the men of the community refusing, saying, "Oh, I'm not going to raise another man's kids. Oh, no way, not me. I don't, I just deal with me and mine." So it's
Right.
and that
Right.
and from that perspective, I understand where you're coming from, because it's like, well, wait a minute, it's not just about you. You can't just say, "Oh, the community is just about me." You know what I mean? Then
Right.
that's not the community,
Absolutely.
right? So flipping that narrative to where it really does take a village to raise a child, and the men are invested in the children of the
Mm-hmm.
next generation, regardless of who had that child or whose name that child gets to be put on. Makes sense, but I'm not I know in a lot of conversations, the Cynthia G comment comes up where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, why should black women have black male babies if black men are going to abuse black women ultimately when they grow up?
Right.
So I understand that logic, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it's not my desired outcome, because the desired outcome would be that we do have as many children as we can, but
Right.
also have the ability to support those children because everyone's invested in those children, which isn't the case. So I
Right.
understand both. Yeah,
Right, right. Yeah. The thing with that is Cynthia G is saying that because, again, these men grow up in a society where they're taught how to be. They're
yeah,
taught to disrespect women. They're taught women are supposed to be controlled because they're emotional and erratic and da 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 da. Right. So what we're looking at is a product of patriarchy. Right. So we have to take away the patriarchy so that we can have a different outcome of our men. So men are not inherently bad or, diseased individuals. That's not what it is. It's
yeah,
the conditioning that's harmful, and conditioning that can affect women just as much as it affects men. You know what
right,
I mean? So when we are talking about um who should be here and whether we should be having more babies and things like that, I'm not against having children, or expanding our population, right? My biggest issue is the quality of life we are bringing these children into. That's a responsibility, whether people think about it that way or not. It's a responsibility to bring in new life into this world, right? And when we're doing that, what are we bringing them into? We're bringing them into um, oppression. They are automatically the property of the state. And that means birth certificates, social security numbers, all of that is property of the state. Like, you can't have a child right now and have a child at home and that's it, and then just name it and go about your life. That's illegal, because now you're keeping property from this particular society. That's their property. You cannot just have a kid and then just that's it. No, they have to get the proper paperwork, because you have to, like, you know what I mean? You have to get them shots in order for them to go to school. You have to follow these guidelines of what to do. And if our men think that this is what life is supposed to be like, then by all means, go ahead and have children if you want. But that to me is very irresponsible if you guys believe that you guys are leaders. If you're leaders of this particular community and you think that that is what life is supposed to be like, then you should not be leading. And I can see why women like Cynthia G could say, you know what, forget y'all, because you guys are unreasonable. You don't care about how people are affected. You just want more things that you can call your own. And I say things, but I'm talking about children, because
Right.
that's how men see their babies. They want to have a plethora of children, a plethora of wives. They want to collect. It's like a coin collection. You want to have a collection, and you want to be able to show off to other men, to show them how big and macho you are. And that does not help a community. Like, you know what I mean? So it
Right.
really gets me very, very upset when men decide that they want to practice a custom that's supposed to be practiced in a state of a healthy environment. So anytime you look at any ancient society, when they practiced a particular custom of polygamy, it was done for a societal need. It was not done because of any individual person, and the entire society did it. So if polyandry was practiced, it was done because they needed, they had a limited resources. We as a community have limited resources. We don't have any resources. There's nothing that we can do without the watchful eye of the patriarchy. There's nothing we can do. There's a lot of things we can do. We can't even travel freely. And what I mean by travel freely is, if we don't have a passport or it's not up to date, we can't cross a border. If we can't even drive without paying tolls. We can't do anything. We have to have a license to travel. You understand what I'm saying? So everything we do is under the watchful eye of the patriarchy, and men need to come out of this particular conditioning that tells them that this is how life is supposed to be. This is the structure of life. That's not the structure of life. And you can tell, the more you do your research, the more you read about ancient societies. It doesn't matter what country, it doesn't matter any country, right? Everybody understood that we lived in accordance to the land, right? We farmed or we traveled, and we built our houses and we lived on the land. There was no redlining, there was no taxes. You know what I mean? There was no
Right.
rent, mortgage, none of that existed, right? There was only trading, there was markets, there was things like that, but there was no land ownership. There was no people ownership. When people got married, they did it because they wanted to procreate. That's it. It was like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So once we get out of that, we can't have a nation expanding custom, because that's what polygyny is. It's nation expanding, because it's about having children. But polyandry is about building the strength economically, mentally. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's about brotherhood, men coming together, being able to put their mission above themselves. So I'm sorry for the rant, but
No,
that, yeah.
I remember I was this was last summer. I was just driving, driving to I think I was driving to work, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember I saw a deer. There's like this golf course on my way to work, and I saw a deer just cross the street
Mm-hmm.
and go into the golf course, and he was just chilling, doing his thing, eating grass, and I was like, that deer doesn't have to pay rent
No,
to
it
anybody. That
doesn't.
deer doesn't have a mortgage. That deer doesn't have an electric bill, a gas bill, a water bill. When the deer wants water, the deer just goes to the creek, which I think that's where the deer was on his way to. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like, I mean, obviously, it seems obvious, but it's not really like, wow, we are the only creatures on the planet that are paying for water. And
Yes.
the deer is using the same water that we're using and doesn't have to pay for it. Just goes and
Yeah,
gets a drink. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
We it's even getting to the point where I mean you can't just collect rainwater. You know what I mean? A lot of places it's illegal. In some places it's illegal to be homeless. You know what I mean? Just
Mhm.
to be in,
Yes.
sleep outside. Got a tent. No, it's illegal. You
Right, it's
can't do that.
illegal. Yes, I need people to start thinking about these things. Like the more you really sit back and just think about it, because we're so consumed with survival that we don't have a moment to think. You understand what I'm saying? We don't have these moments where we could just sit back and just really think about our state of living.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's also could be illegal depending on where you are to feed the homeless, just to give
Hmm.
somebody food because it's
Hmm.
if you give too many people food. So yeah, that's that definitely resonates. What let's see.
Oh my
To
gosh, there was this movie. There was this movie that I want people to watch. It's by Dr. Seuss. It's not is it called the Lorax?
yeah.
Have you seen that?
I know I read the book when I was a kid. I don't know if I saw the movie.
Look at the movie, okay?
Okay.
Look at the movie. If you guys have not seen the Lorax, go ahead and watch it. That is a Dr. Seuss adaptation animation, right? Which I'm a big kid at heart. So when you watch certain things, it comes with a very deep message. I want you to watch it. See, you love that movie, yes. And it's about this particular ruler who decided to bottle up oxygen and sell it to people. The trees were fake in this society. All plants were fake, and it was illegal to have real trees, real plants. Now, tell me we're not on that wave right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we bottle up water when I don't know how many people travel, but when you go to other countries and I can easily drink from the streams, the rivers. I can drink from them and it's clean and delicious. But out here, and there's fruits coming off of every tree just falling to the ground rotting because it's just abundant fruit everywhere. But out here, it's illegal to plant a tree on your block in front of your house, a female tree that has fruits. But only male trees, the city plants the trees, and you have to get a permit, and it can't be a fruit tree. It has to be a male, it has to be a part of the list of trees that they ordain to be on the city blocks. So we have to start looking at all these things and realize, wow, we're really property. And we want to have kids and make them property of this system as well. Hmm? Does that seem smart? I wouldn't want to follow a leader that would want us to be in this particular society.
That's yes, that's troubling. You know what I mean? That's real troubling. You know what I mean? You got to
Yeah.
get a license to fish. You got to get a license to hunt. And I understand it is under the guise of well safety. But the problem is the same people that are providing the safety are the same people that are profiting from the violence, right? So
Yes, absolutely.
I know there's a capitalist somewhere saying, "Man, how can we charge people for air? Because we're
That
already
they're
that's
about to do
real,
it. They're about to do it.
and they'll do it by polluting the air so bad that you can't breathe it naturally."
Yes, that's the whole game plan is In order for us to make money, we have to create a problem so that we can be the saviors to be able to come and provide the solution. And the solution is where we're going to get our big bucks.
Then it's seeds. Are you you know, coming up with custom made seeds that are not only patented, right? You have to pay for the seeds, but they're destructive. So the seeds will actually make the ground, so only those seeds will grow. That's a problem. That for me is like one of the biggest problems of capitalism. At its extreme, you have people purposefully destroying the environment, destroying the world we live in, so they can make a profit off of it.
Yes,
And when that's
absolutely.
done, it's like, oh, we'll just Moon X, SpaceX, we'll just go to another planet, and do the same thing.
Right, exactly. And that's
Yeah,
the whole premise of the Lorax movie.
yeah. All right, I got to see it now.
You got to
Gotta,
watch it now.
yeah, gotta see it. So, can you tell me about like just your personal journey in creating? Because I want to get back to this book, which is for sale, by the way, on Amazon.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey in creating this work and what inspired you to write it?
Well, I became inspired just the same way I became inspired to teach, because I started teaching before I wrote the book. Um, it was when I came into to officially date polyandrously. So I'm joining all these Facebook groups and just trying to figure out what people are talking about, in polyamorous spaces, polygamous spaces, both, right? And I'm just consuming because I love to learn. And one thing I've noticed is that there is a lack of information about polyandry. So I'm like, oh, and then every time I try to, date polyandrously, I'm coming across men who don't know what it is, or they equate it as polyamory, which is incorrect. It's a polygamous custom, right? So I'm like, okay, well, obviously, since no one's talking about it, or the ones who are talking about it are describing it as polyamory, I don't like misinformation. So I'm just going to come out and start teaching. So I started teaching. My Instagram blew to the point where now I'm doing seeking Saturdays. So now I'm helping people find mates, hosting little dating lives and things like that, so they can come up and actually talk to each other and see if there's a spark, blah blah blah. And now I own my own Facebook group. Now I'm helping people learn everything. But as I'm doing this, people are coming to me and asking me questions, and I'm getting a lot of the same questions. So then I became inspired to write a book. At first, I started looking to see if there was a book out there so I could recommend it. But because there wasn't, there's only polyamory books written by a plethora of people, and there's polygyny books. um there's probably only like 1 to 2 polyandry books, and it is a historical rendition of it in Tibet and India, and that's it. So I'm like, that doesn't help us who are living and dating today, Black people in this country, in the United States. So I wanted to make sure that I utilize all of my research and my experience and be able to help as many people as possible. So I decided to write the book. And again, during my journey and just talking with people on a regular basis, because there's so much pushback on what polyandry is, or whether a woman should be opening herself up to more than one man, there's a lot of um, discourse about whether it should be practiced, whether it's natural, whether it is righteous, whether it is something that's respected. It's to the point where there are a lot of people, especially men, who would much rather do it in secret or not do it at all, because it's not deemed respectful. It's not deemed as something that we should do. It's not a nation building custom, right? And because of all of these misconceptions, it put the book on hold for a while, because like the book sat there for like 7 months without me adding to it at all, incomplete, because I was just like, It's not for us. We're not ready for it. A lot of people are still closed-minded. We're not on the conscious level enough to be able to understand or be able to digest something like polyandry in the awakened state. So I almost didn't do it. I was just like, whatever.
I'm glad that you did. For those who are listening, it's Queendom,
Yeah.
the art of polyandry for the Black Goddess, by Akasha Divine. It's pronounced Divine, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so make sure it's available. Is it? It's available on Amazon. Or is there any other
On
place
Amazon.
where? Okay, got you, got
Yes.
you.
Very easy. Should come to you in 2 days.
Yeah, yeah. It was pretty. It got here pretty quick for me. It was maybe I didn't do this quick delivery, so I got but it came to me very quickly and had nice little packaging. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. How does your book help women improve their lives and the relationships they have with men that would court their attention?
Um. Well, it helps women deconstruct their inner misogyny, helps women deconstruct the conditioning they got. Because one thing that we all know is men aren't the only ones who get conditioned by this society, women do as well. So, this is why I have a whole chapter on goddess worship. To get women to understand that there is a particular way you're supposed to be treated in a relationship, and you cannot be ashamed about that. You know what I mean? So this is something that I think would help them, even if they decide not to be polyandrous at the end of reading it. I think ultimately they will feel empowered to know how they're supposed to be treated regardless.
Love that. So how would you? I guess along those lines, how would you describe the ideal relationship between a woman and a man, or a woman and the men in her life?
Ideally, ideally, it should be one where she feels freedom, one where the men do not feel lost on who they are, where they are able to receive the support that they need, not just from her, but also from their friends. Basically, taking them out of that crabs in a barrel mentality where they can not be afraid to ask for help. Like, you know what I mean? That's the whole point of the brotherhood, where everything just isn't on them. The whole world is not on their shoulders. And I think ultimately it creates a more healthy and balanced, dynamic and each individual.
Absolutely. So, and you talked about goddess worship. So
Mhm.
let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what does it mean when you say the black woman is God?
Yes, so that has a twofold meaning, right? Twofold meaning. And before me, it has always been taught by men. And I'm prefacing my statement with that for a reason. Okay. And because it has always been taught from an earthly perspective. So that means, black women are the mothers of civilization. Just understanding that from a black woman, every other skin color, hair color, eye color can be produced from her. So that means she's responsible for bringing in all the other races, as well as environmental conditions and adaptivity, helping them change, right? But also understanding that she is the first to walk this particular planet. So even before Lucy, we have Omo One, which is about 30 or so thousand years earlier. She is the first human being bones that we have remains, and she dates back to about 2.5 to 300,000 years ago. So yes, when I say the black woman is God, I'm speaking on both the earthly perspective, as in she is the one who creates, but also in the cosmic perspective, as in this universe is something that is forever creating, as in it's always expanding and it is dark. Everything is dark matter. If even if everything that we see right now, it looks like it's light and colors and everything, but those are just refractions coming from one source, okay? One light source. And that light source emanates from darkness. If we think about creation, because everybody defines God in their own way, but if we talk about what God is by every person's perspective, doesn't matter what race or creed, God is the one who creates. So, thinking about creation, we can utilize the concept of the law of correspondence, right? As above, so below. So, looking at our everyday reality, creation happens within the womb or a state of darkness. So, within the womb would be not just human beings, right? But also plants. There has to be a dark and moist environment for a plant to germinate, a seed to germinate, for it to grow into a plant. When we are creating food, soup, we're putting it in a pot, right? And we have to cover that pot for the stew to be able to cook. Then once we open the lid, now we have dinner, right? So the more we think about how creation happens, we're realizing that it happens in a dark, moist state. What is dark and moist? The womb, right? So that means our universe, the cosmic universe that we're in, space, right? It is dark primordial waters or the abyss. So that means we are living in our cosmic parent's womb. That's how we are created, right? If you look at the body of a male, he is incapable of creation. He is a image of the female, right? A derivation of the female. So he doesn't have that womb space to create. But the woman, she creates and she's able to sustain life once she gives birth, and she can feed the child with just her body. She doesn't need materials to create something, right? The man needs materials to create, to build, to mold. So when we're talking about who our cosmic creator is, the ultimate creator, the most high, that would be our mother in both the earth and the cosmic realm. So that's what I mean by the Black woman is God.
No, thank you for that. And I think I guess a follow up question to that, going back to the beginning, we were talking about specifically like a lot of men say that. Like, what? Why do you think that is? And I think like what is the difference between when men are promoting it, or rather, some of the men who have promoted it in the past versus when a woman promotes it, or the way that you promote it.
The biggest difference is that there's a cap to their consciousness. You know what I mean? So because of the way their brain works, it just makes them understand the woman creating on an earthly realm. So they don't get to the cosmic realm. Like if you look at any of the Black Woman is God teachers, I don't know if you know Dr. Ben Yochanan or John Henry Clark or Natra Tahuti or who was it? General Seti, Young Pharaoh, all these people, right? Everyone who taught that, they always taught it in the sense of she's the mother of civilization, which means they understand the X chromosome. They understand that she's the one who can give birth. They understand the biological attributes of creation, right? But because they only have a linear way of thinking, they can't conceive of the cosmic level because there's no evidence or proof of that. You kind of have to utilize your third eye wisdom to understand that part because there's no proof that the Most High is a man or a woman or whatever, right? So the way in which I find it is by again utilizing my intuition, my womb space, because that's my connection to source. So I'm able to piece different things together so that you guys can understand it and be able to teach it. But I'm coming from the cosmic you know sense as well as the earthly sense. And I think a lot of men get tripped up in that area because I've spoken to men who said the Black woman is God, but but she's not the Most High. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm confused as to how that makes sense in your mind.
Right.
Like, how does that make sense? You know
The
what I
Most High
mean?
would have to be the great goddess. That would be.
It would have to be because you can't conceive of a woman giving birth and being able to create here, but in order for her to be created, she had to be made from the dust of the ground. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'll be trying to understand the male mind, and I'll be stumped. I'll be stumped. And they could never explain it themselves, because I'm very open to listening and understanding where you're coming from, but they can't verbalize what they mean. You know what I mean? And there's that hesitance or resistance coming from the patriarchal religions, coming from monotheism and Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and coming into the philosophy that the Black woman is God. And there's just that little bit of resistance to where, yes, she's the mother of civilization, but that's it. You know what I mean? And the Most High is still a man, because that gives me something, makes me not feel inferior, or, you know. And I think that's where a lot of men struggle with, even when it comes to polyandry as well, like always trying to figure out like their own self-importance. And that's what stops them in their quest for, you know, self-understanding.
I wanted to ask this question because it's I know that anytime you challenge someone's religious understanding, you run into cognitive dissonance, and the triggered reactions can vary widely. But like, what are some of the reactions you get when you introduce yourself as a goddess, and what would your advice to be, in addition to, you know, topping this book, to, you know, for women who are just starting out on a similar path?
Well, some of the reactions I get is, I guess, from the conscious community. They kind of understand. They're like, oh, hey, goddess, how are you? But from people outside of that, because the conscious community is pretty small, people outside of that, they say, oh, that's blasphemy. You're not God. You know, God is the most high. You know, they usually say, oh, forgive her, for she know not what she do. You know, all of those, right?
Right.
So with this particular book, I help the women see themselves for who they are, help them understand their own divinity. Hopefully, if they don't get it, then I will have more books coming out to help. This is just a intro, just for the sake of you practicing, you know, polyandry. But I do have more books in the works, so
Still.
you know, I'm always writing. I'm writing like 3 books at once. But anyway, yes, women have to understand who they are and how they're divine. And once they understand that, then they can accept a relationship where they are treated as such. Hence goddess worship, right? Because there's so much elements to a relationship that we have lost because we've lost our identity. You know what I mean? We've lost who we are, and this book, it helps us get back to who we are naturally.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So I guess on the other side of things, like what would have been, I guess, your observations of the men who have kind of made that journey from, or transition from, a patriarchal religion to goddess worship, and how
Mhm.
does the mentality and behavior change when that's done?
Um, Basically, what I've noticed is that there is an inherent resistance a little bit, right? Because they're obviously transferring, but I think they don't realize how difficult the process can be depending on where they're coming from. Like, you know what I mean? And it's different for everybody. I've noticed if they come from a single parent home where it's just a mother, it's a lot easier for those than those who come from, you know, a double parent home who's seen the father be the leader and things like that, so they want to emulate that, right? So they come over, and one thing that I've noticed is that they do have an inherent respect for women, especially if they've had children already and they've had daughters. A lot of transitioning happens there, you know, before even the relationship. Once they have a daughter, they start realizing, oh, I have to change. I don't want her to go through things that I have done in my past. So, yes, that's where that change happens. And then relationships from there, from them having a daughter, is actually easier for them to come into goddess worship and understanding the female led relationship, So it's actually much more healthy. They're able to communicate, right? They're able to take criticism without feeling emasculated, without feeling slighted, as in their masculinity is slighted. My partner right now, when I'm speaking to him, there's a lot of times I make the mistake of prefacing a statement or, trying to give him that disclaimer before I say something. And he's like, I'm not one of these other dudes. You don't have to talk to me like that. Just tell me what you need to say. So I make that mistake a lot because, of course, I speak to the public. But when I'm speaking to him, I don't have to, whatchamacallit, cater to his ego. You know what I mean? Because not saying that he doesn't have one, we all do, but he's more balanced in his ego and whether he's able to grow or not. And what I say and what I give him, he appreciates my input, my wisdom. So once we get to that part where men can do the self-work, when they can do the self-work, they become more tolerable beings. And then we don't have to worry about any more Cynthia G's saying we shouldn't birth baby boys, right? Because then they become beings that we love to be around. And it's crazy because, one thing, I'm sorry, I'd be laughing, but one thing that really tickles me is the discourse between Black men and Black women, right? And how there is a battle of the wills. And the men are saying, this is how it should be. This is what we want. Da, 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 da. But wouldn't it make more sense for you to do what's necessary for you to have a woman if you find that that is most important in your life? If it's most important in your life to obtain a relationship and be able to have a child, why would you be fighting against the one that you need to mate with? Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. So, overall, men will become quote unquote simps. I don't want to use that word because it has negative connotation towards it. But the truth of the matter is men become simps, but they become a joy to be around. They become more healthy partners. But that's what simping is. Simping is becoming a healthy partner for a woman.
Just want to address a couple of things I see in the comments. So on the matter of the Cynthia G comment, I think it's important to look at the context of where that comment was made. Right, if you're being harassed, right, if you're being abused, if you're being threatened, you're getting death threats and things of that nature,
Right.
and you ask a hypothetical question, you ask a question of logic. Okay, if we are birthing our own oppressors, meaning birthing men who then grow up to become 18, 20, 30, 40, and then only to turn against us and assault us and unalive us, even sometimes their own mothers, why would you, how do we break this cycle? Asking the question, how do we break this cycle to say, okay, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. Why do we have male children? She asked that question, and I don't agree with the answer, of course, being a male, or even just being, Black. But at the same time, I find it curious how many men take issue with the comment, but don't investigate the context and don't try to resolve the context in which the comment was made. If you're so interested about Black women wanting to have Black males, why wouldn't you create an environment, work to create an environment where it's a joy to have Black male children, right? Where it's a joy to experience Black boys and black boys going to Black men who don't then turn around and assault women or create these negative
right
that she was attempting to address.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's a simple desire that women are asking for. The simple desire of, Please respect me and please love me. That's it. I think that's all it really is. Please respect me and please love me. And men are basically saying, I want to control you. That's how I love you. And women are saying, I don't like that. If I were to
Yeah.
just make it as simple as possible. And what Cynthia G did was she mostly just came up with an option. We're in a particular space where we are unhappy with our current reality. What are the options that we have? This She just came up with an option. It's not something that we're obviously all gonna do. You know what I'm saying? But it's an option. Just like there are women saying, "Oh, we should do the 4B movement over here, where women are just no more heterosexual, intercourse, no more marriage, no more children, no more none of that, right? No more interacting." And both options are extreme, right? But as a man, if I am a black man and I am hearing my counterpart, the black woman, speak in this way, then that should put me on my behind and be like, you know what? There's a reason why they're talking like this. And if I don't like the way in which they're talking, then I have to do something. Whether I personally am at fault or not, I need to look at my brothers and be like, well, what are we doing? Start having conversations with other men to be like, why is it our women are feeling like this? Are we happy that they feel like this? Are we going to fight them while they feel like this? Are we going to try and conquer them and beat them down till they submit? You know what I mean? Or are we going to try to figure out what we can do to make them happy so that they can want us? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
And
that's how they should respond to those type of things instead of saying, "Oh, she just hate us. Let's condemn her. Let's talk about her." No, it's not about that. She's a woman who is, weighing out her options, being in a, she's in a oppressed state, like you said. It's the
yeah,
same way black people feel about white people.
no, absolutely.
You know?
And it's crazy to me because it's like the topic won't even be Cynthia G, right? It will be we're talking about how to end misogyny, how to end sexism. Well, what about what women say? This is something one woman said several years ago. You know what I mean? That's not even on TikTok, and you're making that the center when she asked a hypothetical question. When
Right.
women are dealing with a very real reality, where yeah, in
Right.
some cultures, you have a female baby. It's like what I mean? Toss the
Right.
baby off the
Absolutely.
cliff. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Or you say, oh well, if she can't have children, then she's not worth anything. You know what I'm saying? So that's the
Absolutely.
reality women live in. The hypothetical
Absolutely.
situation that you're complaining about is the reality that women live in and have lived in for millennia at this point. So why not? I don't get that, but yeah, that
Right.
doesn't make any sense to
Right.
me.
The quote unquote misandry or the oppression that men feel from women is literally attack on their feelings, their egos. That's what they feel is oppressive.
Yeah,
While
absolutely.
women
And
go
Bray's
through
son
real
makes a great
things.
point. Like I'd never heard of Cynthia. I'd never heard one woman quote or even mention the name of Cynthia G on this app. I heard about Cynthia G from black men
Yeah, because
over
because
and
they're
over and
they're
over
hurting,
again.
they're in pain,
Yeah,
because they are now oppressed by her thoughts.
yeah,
Nothing she really did,
yeah,
but just her thoughts. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It has not impacted their lives in any other way other than just hurting their feelings.
Absolutely. And you platform her when you bring up her ideas that we weren't
Yes.
thinking about.
Yes,
You
because
know what
now
I'm saying?
people are going to go and look and listen to what she has to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did. I was like, "Who's Cynthia?" I just keep hearing it from black men. What? Who's the Cynthia G? Let me go find it.
Right.
Oh,
Absolutely.
there it is.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, it's anyway. Speaking of black men, in what ways do men need to rethink brotherhood in order to improve their families and their community?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That comes from the self work that I mentioned earlier. Um, there has to be a environment where they can come out of the crabs in a barrel mentality. right? So it's not about you, like we mentioned earlier. It's not about you. It's not about me. I. Once we come out of the I and understand the we, which is why with polyandry, we teach that each man is an extension of the other, which means you are no more important or no less important than the man that's standing next to you. Every link in the chain is just as important. So, in order for us to all be able to accomplish one goal, so you know how when in the black community, when um a man has a baby mother, right? His friend cannot date that woman after their relationship is over and done with.
Right.
That's the bro code that they have now, because she is now his property and forever will be his property because they have a child together. He already killed, right? These are the
Wow.
terms they use. So what that does is, if his friend was to date his baby mother or his girlfriend or whatever for that matter after him, that is in violation of their bro code. Then their relationship is severed because they both had an interest in the same woman. Now, how does that help us as a community build anything? If something as simple as having an interest in the same woman at different times, mind you, can break us apart. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to place our men in an environment where that doesn't sever their brotherhood bonds. We have to make sure that they're able to place the mission, and the mission is Black liberation, above their self interest, above their ego. Yes, it's more important.
Yeah. There is a, I don't know, I see a double edged sword. You know what I mean? I see sometimes there can be men and women, right, who will
Mhm.
even target a group of friends with the specific ends of kind of pulling them apart because now they have conflicting interests. Where it's like I have this romantic interest, but I also have a loyalty to my friendship, and they actually pull on those
Mhm.
loyalties or whatnot. So I've seen that like break apart even families, but at
Right.
the same time there that ownership component where it's like okay once I have relationship with you then I own you forever and I'm gonna your body belongs to me that can be toxic as well because it's like
Yes.
okay um and I see that a lot play out with quote unquote baby mamas where it's like
Mhm.
the dude will he believes that because he has a child with a woman now that's just his he can just come back whenever he wants to
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
doesn't really regard the other men or see the other men that are coming into his child's life via his his counterpart as an asset, but more so something that needs to be defended against. You know what I mean? It's
Right, right, because it's an infringement upon his property. You see what I'm
right.
saying? So that's what the issue is, and I'm trying to make sure, especially when it comes to men in a polyandry, when it comes to kids, because they always ask, well, whose kid is it? It's all of their child. So we're going back to the the village can raise a child mentality, where the mentality is, if each man is an extension of self, of one
Yeah.
being, then they're all fathers for that one child. You know what I mean?
It's looking
So
at what is going to benefit the child. What would benefit the child is the men in that situation, whether you be, boyfriend, husband, baby father, uncle, whoever, they
right,
all
exactly,
collaborate,
exactly.
to raise that child. Grandfather, as opposed
Absolutely.
to
They have to
yeah,
look at it that way, as extended family. But because we have these patriarchal, ideals about everything, everything is about mine. You know what I mean? It's mine or it's not mine. And if it's not mine, then I'm not taking care of it. But that's a very divisive way of going about things. Divide and conquer. Remember, if we
yeah.
understand that our oppressor applies this particular tactic to our nation as a whole, then that means we have to counteract that with community. So that means communal living.
Yeah.
looking at everybody as family, and being able to stop putting yourself above everything else, because you don't
Facts.
matter by yourself. You
Facts.
can't take down the patriarchy by yourself. You need
Yeah.
everybody else. So, yeah.
And those systems work on or thrive in isolation. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it thrives in you not knowing who your neighbors are, not knowing even who your family members are. You know what I mean? Just
Right.
being, thinking that you're, I got this nuclear family thing going on, and that's all I care about. It's just
Yes. And that's what keeps us in this state as well, because we're all gonna just worry about our own struggles in our own little home and our own little bubble. And if we need help, or if something was to happen, then it is what it is. We just gonna struggle together. That's it.
right.
And a polygynous family is just worse off, because they're just dependent on that one man. You know what I mean?
Vanity said nuclear families are radioactive.
Yes, absolutely.
But that brings up a good question. Like, what are some of the common barriers that men encounter in collaborating with each other when they do love the same person?
A lot of it is identity based. Who are they? What do, like, their own self-importance, trying to establish what that is. And that's what actually uh distracts them from the mission at hand, right? If they're always worried about um their own self-importance, they're distracted from the mission, because the mission isn't about you. But that is the biggest thing that they go through when they love the same woman. They can all have different things to add to the relationship. They all can have great qualities, but that insecurity is what stops them every time.
That's a big facts. Um, I guess the other side of it, and you talked about this. I guess this kind of brings it full circle because you talked about this when we were talking about leadership. But what difficulties might a woman face in being fair and just in her dealings with multiple exclusive partners?
Yeah. Back to what we were saying earlier, where it's all about the perception of how she's loving them, right? If these men are going through their insecurities, which shows up as jealousy, right? It will always come back on her as to how she's treating them. If she is, giving them what it is that they need, utilizing that discernment, and also being able to decipher whether it's something she's doing, or if it is his insecurity showing up. You know what I mean? She has to be able to decipher between the two, because they can look the same, especially if she have a man who is he has the ability to communicate very well. You know what I mean? He has the gift of gab. He can word his trigger or insecurity in a way that makes it seem like she's at fault because she didn't do something that would be considered fair. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So again, all of that, the perception of fairness has to do with that those men and how they see themselves, how they feel, they bring value to the relationship.
So again, the name of the book is Queendom, The Art of Polyandry for the Black Goddess by Akasha Divine, um, available on Amazon. Um, I want to kind of towards the end of your book, you talk about the multi-father system,
Yes.
and I wanted to dig into that a little bit. How can the multi-father system benefit women who might not be interested in polyandry?
Right. So I did want to add that in for anyone who's reading it just for informational purposes, just for educational purposes, and they may be on the fence on whether they want to do it or not, or whatever, right? But I wanted to make sure that the overall mission and goal of the liberation of our nation is still applied, whether they're into it romantically or not. So the multi-father system is to help those women who have multiple baby daddies, right? Because they tend to get shunned and talked about, and everybody looks down on them. But the truth of the matter is that you're in a unique position to actually help the next generation, your children. So you also have the ability to speak to these men and see if they're willing to cooperate. Because the benefits of men cooperating, especially when they all have a child by the same woman, is that the children benefit. We have to take ourselves out of the situation all the time. I know that these situations are sticky, whenever we're no longer in relationships with people, we have to deal with co-parenting, and it's so much to that situation. But we have to be realistic and understand that everything we do is about the children at the end of the day. It's not about us, so we have to do whatever we can to make sure they're good. So that means you can go to these men and basically just ask them, like, if I were not here, you know what I mean? If I were not here, how would you care for my child, the child that we have together? And would they still be in communication and interaction with their siblings by other men? You have to ask that and see where their head is. And if they believe that a child should be in contact with their siblings at all times, then you need to start helping them, slowly but surely, helping them coordinate with the other men. Because again, let's just say you're not in romantic relationship with any of the men, right? Let's just say you aren't with any of them. You have to get them to start working together for those children. Because what if something happens to both you and a specific father of one child? What will happen to that one child? Can it go and live with their sibling who is fathered by another man? You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that we have to start thinking about, and we can't keep putting our egos before our children's lives. You know what I mean? So we have to start thinking about what's best for the next generation, or we need to stop having kids.
It reminds me of there was, and I think this video was a spoof. I'm actually pretty sure it was a spoof, but a year or two ago, there was a video where a man basically brought McDonald's, but he just brought McDonald's for his kid, and the other kids were hungry. And he gets into an argument with his baby mama because it's like, well, wait a minute, I got these other kids. What am I supposed to do with them? He's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I just came to feed my kid. And it's like, wow, where's the heart? You know what I mean? Where's the heart where you could look at a kid that doesn't have food? You have the means. Now it's not a matter of means. You have the means to give food for everybody, but you're just gonna give food to that one kid. You know what I mean? How is now that relationship with that kid, if the mother allows it, first of all, but if she allows it, how is the relationship with him eating McDonald's and from his siblings going to affect that relationship? You create jealousy,
because that not only affects the baby mother and that man, but it also affects the kids. Because you got to understand, the kids, they have their own relationships with each other. If they see one of their siblings eating and the rest of them don't have food, how do you think they're going to treat your kid if he's seen as favored? You understand what I'm saying? If he's seen as favored, he can easily be ostracized. It can become a us versus them type situation. They can start fighting. And men may not think about it that way. Like, these kids, they're not just property or things that you own. They have personalities. They're human beings. You know what I mean? They have consciousness. So that means they're going to have their own little world that's separate from our adult world. And you have to take in consideration what they're going to go through by your actions. So yes, it's not just, oh, that's my kid, I'm only going to feed my kid because it's mine. No, that mentality just has to go. It's ridiculous. That's actually really sad. No, that has to go.
And just to address because the commenter says, I love the concept, but there are 5 relationships that ended that you're working against there. And I have to say, like, we have to be able to separate the romantic relationship that we have with someone versus the very necessary and practical relationship and loving relationship that we should have with our children. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, I think some men, because I've heard men say, well, they basically stopped, dealing with the mother of their children because she had another man in her life. Either that, or they actually took active steps to run that man off because they didn't
Mhm.
want another man over their children. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah. They don't even realize that they are making they're crippling our entire nation, black people, right? They're crippling our entire nation by setting these parameters because there's conditions to what will allow them to be a part of their child's life. And if they don't have control over that child or their mother, then they will not be a part of that child's life. And this is what we suffer from as a community, of having fatherless homes so rampant in our community. Like, you know what I mean? It's all these parameters that basically gets them to walk away from their responsibility. And it should not be like that.
right. And just because a relationship ends doesn't mean that's a bad thing. You know what I mean? A
Right,
relationship
right.
ending should be a good thing in many cases because it's two adults finding out that they're not compatible with living with each other. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Okay, we have incompatibility, so let's stay together and just fight all the time in front of our kid. You know what I mean? And just,
Right, right, right.
just force it, as opposed to saying, okay, hey, this isn't working. Let's find a different arrangement. But we still have this child. How are we going to both come together to raise this child? You know what I mean? And having that conversation. But because we can't get over that, us not working, now now
Mm-hmm.
this child maybe doesn't have a father or a mother because both of them are in such disarray. So I feel like, yeah, that's a something that we all have to work on. You know what I mean? How can you effectively raise your child with the natural understanding that people are going to have romantic interest to change and shift, as we get older.
Abs-
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think
So
we need to separate, our romance from caring for children. And because
right,
they're so interlinked and tied, this is why kids suffer. And that's what the multi-father system is really about. It's about knowing that the romance has no part to play in that at all.
right,
It doesn't even matter. It's about the children.
yeah, absolutely. And on the other side of it, and this is just my comment for
Mm-hmm.
those that are in a relationship. Because of that, you need to establish a separate romantic relationship with your partner. Your parenting relationship, if you are like in a committed marriage or committed partnership, does not base you cannot base your romantic relationship based on your relationship with your children. You have to
Right.
continue to keep that active as well and make time for yourselves as a couple. You know what I mean? To make sure that
Absolutely.
relationship also remains
Two
strong.
separate relationships. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, like, what, and this is my last question. What are some lessons that you have, that you've learned about love that all men should really, and really all people, but all men should apply, really in their relationship, regardless of their relationship dynamic.
Well, one thing that I teach about love is that love is a state of being. It's a frequency, right? It's the frequency of healing. And as people who understand the solfeggio frequencies, 528 hertz, that frequency is a healing frequency. It heals your organs and cells and things like that. And if we understand that that frequency is love, then we should emanate what that frequency is in order to love someone, right? So we have to understand that love is healing. The issue is we look at the definition of love in these dictionaries, which tells you it's about emotional attachment or feelings. It's not about that. It's about ensuring that you're able to provide an environment that enables growth, right? So the sun loves because it gives out energy and produces things to help things and people to grow, right? If you were to pick a flower out the ground because you think you love it, it's only an attachment that you have to that flower. But because you have an attachment to it, an emotional attachment to it, it dies. But if you were to love it, then you would go back and water it every day, because that's how you show a flower love. You make sure that it is in an environment for it to grow. So that's my biggest lesson about love that I want everyone to apply, because I'm tired of people thinking that love is about emotional attachment and then placing conditions on their emotional attachment and calling it love. That's not what it is. It's not what it is. Love is healing.
That's powerful. Um, I know typically we say from 1 to 2 hours, and we went over time. So I didn't know if there was if you wanted to take any questions from the comment section. But I definitely wanted to thank you for sharing time and space and coming back on the show. The Will to
Mhm.
Change Project. Again, the name of the book is Queendom: the art of polyandry for the Black Goddess. It is
Yes,
available
yes.
on Amazon. You also
Yeah.
have a few YouTube channels as well as resources too, right?
Yes. So my YouTube is at Akasha Divine, and Divine is spelled Vinn, not INE. So that is my YouTube channel. My Instagram, I have at Black Polyandry, right? And I also have at underscore Yanism underscore. And that is the page where I teach the philosophy of the Black woman being God, and all of it ties into polyandry. I want people to understand that there are people who are practicing polyandry who do not adhere to a matriarchal mindset. They don't have the understanding that the Most High is a feminine principle, and what they do is they carry over the patriarchal ideals and conditions into their relationship, and it does not help at all. But if you're learning it from me, then you would be learning everything that comes with it. All of the self work, all of the consciousness elevation, all of that comes with polyandry. That's how you benefit from the relationship outside of it just being, a more fruitful emotional attachment type of dynamic. It's more than that. It is something that helps with cognitive expansion. So I hope people are able to understand that and engage properly.
Absolutely. And just, I guess, shameless plug for me as well. This interview was a part of the Will to Change project. This is the launch date, actually. So we are now live on YouTube and also on Spotify. So you can see the first 9 episodes, well, really 8 episodes on YouTube and Spotify. We've had so many guests, and really the goal of this project is to really have the conversations about dismantling patriarchy, right? I think Goddess Akasha definitely has, put out pretty much a working manual for how to do that. One way, for you to explore that. So definitely do check out her book, but do check out the Will to Change Project as well. We are on YouTube, we are on Spotify, and we're going to continue to do more incredible things and have more incredible conversations. So. I think at this time, unless there are additional questions in the comment section, we can come down from this place. Again, thank you so much. Make sure you follow Goddess Kasha. Obviously, she's on TikTok. So if you're not following her already, she does lives of her own where you can learn more about this teaching. But again, thank you so much. Peace, Pastor Kofi. Thank you
Yeah,
so much
thank
for.
you. Thank you so much for doing this. Just being, a conduit for change is really big, especially as a Black man. Kudos to you, because you are the working example of what men should aspire to be like. It not saying that there's perfection, but it's a work in progress, and it starts with just taking that first step. So I'm super proud of you, and I love everything that you're doing, and even all the guests that you have on. I listen to all of them. They're all great, great minds, beautiful souls, and I'm so happy that this is happening.
I appreciate you. Appreciate you. And shout out to my wife, Asa Kakina, the sculptor of this work in progress. A lot of that.
Yes,
Go,
yes, the
go to her.
sculptor. Yes, yes, yes. All praises to the wife.
But I appreciate you. We'll continue on, and move forward from there. And when you come out with the next 3 books, please visit us again. We'll be happy to have more conversations.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it was a great interview. The time doesn't matter. I always spend time with you. So yeah, let me know. Hit me up whenever you need. I will always be glad to come back.
Sounds like a plan. Well, all of you, thank you again. Please again check out the Spotify and the YouTube, and we'll continue on. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy your Sunday.
Much love.
But you gotta maintain, Yeah, so. This song is for the flower that blossoms in the rain. First woman, I know it seems like life never lets up, and every time you get ahead, another crisis develops. You're fighting with health and trying to pay the lights and electric. Your greatest hustle known as trying to raise a child by yourself. It's like you go through hell trying to get your children to heaven, only to have them treat your feelings with a lack of compassion. Back in the past, I remember we confided like friends. Now because of me, our time is much less, and I regret that it took me 5 years to finally write you this letter. I hope it finds you when you're smiling and resting and not depressed. I was drowning one night, and I wrote down this message. Sometimes clouds are umbrellas for light, and we huddle up under our own problems like a shelter from God. It kinda turned into a model for life. I know you fed up sometimes. I wonder how your mind can keep it together. Cause when most weather the storm, you storm the weather, and you saw the better half in me. So now it's time for me to see the better half in me. Tragedy, just feathers trying to help you to fly. Problems make it easier to keep your head to the sky. And if you keep your focus on God, forever is now. Every day's the 31st of December. Despite the rain, you remember that every cloud in the sky was rained by a higher power, so though everything dies, death is only the reflection of life. So don't cry. Behind the darkest skies, the sun still shines. It's alright. Death is only the reflection of right. It's okay. Sometimes the only way we grow is by making mistakes. Death is only the reflection of life. So don't cry. Behind the darkest skies, the sun still shines. It's alright. Death is only the reflection of right. It's okay. Sometimes the only way we grow is by making mistakes. Strong woman, I know you wear the world in your sleeves, and the loads you bear beyond the verge are making you scream, delaying your dreams. Cause now you got a baby to feed. Working 80 a week, it's hard to see a way to succeed. But when you speak, it's like a newborn tree. Well, oxygen, it's just a memory. Your words allow your purpose to breathe. And though your baby father's maybe not around when you need him, who's to say he's in the state that your baby should see? So don't be sad, cause what you can is not always what you be. And what you ask for when you pray is not always what you need. You're gonna see some trials waiting for your sorrows to end. Just try to keep in mind that every day, tomorrow is different. And follow your vision and remember that you got a friend. If you ever find yourself in a squeeze, best believe it's all arranged to turbulence for any person and beast. Your silhouette is so poetic indeed. You will achieve, but like nature makes a storm before a rainbow is born. It's some sad things that you're gonna see. You won't sing. The rain is just a glass of water God needs you to drink. So your roots will have more faith when you see him. So just believe. Death is only the reflection of life. So don't cry. Behind the darkest skies, the sun still shines. It's alright. Death is only the reflection of right. It's okay. Sometimes the only way we grow is by making mistakes. Last woman, I know you got a lot of decisions and your problems is getting worse. Look at your father is slipping, and you got some resentment cause he never bothered to visit. All the time that he was locked in a prison. Alcoholism got you feeling all that bottle of tension to the point you start to doubt your religion. Cause if God was your friend, why would he keep you in this constant position? The conflict of interest will never get you out your condition. But if you listen, you can hear the sunrise. The horizon ain't as far as it seems sometimes. My dreams find some solace cause though we parted, I respect how you felt. Love is the art of understanding yourself, and I'm learning well that a love doesn't fly anywhere when it dies. Its spirit resides in between us. I feel it inside. It never fades every day I'm alive. I pray that I find a flower that can make the sun shine, but it's fine. This death is only the reflection of life. Don't cry. Behind the darkest skies, the sun still shines. It's alright. Death is only the reflection of right. It's okay. Sometimes the only way we grow is by making mistakes. Death is only the reflection of life. Won't cry. Behind the darkest skies, the sun still shines. It's alright. Death is only the reflection of right. It's okay. Sometimes the only way we grow is by making mistakes.